Hi, everybody. I want to talk today about whether implying is the same thing as lying, or whether indirectness is the same thing as dishonesty. Can we be indirect without being dishonest? Can we imply something without being deceptive? I'm Bruce Lambert from HowCommunicationWorks.com, and let's get started. So a couple of weeks ago, I made a video about Ray Dalio's principle of radical honesty and radical transparency. This is the idea that in business especially, we should be completely transparent. We should tell the truth all the time, and we shouldn't worry too much about being tactful or being diplomatic or really worry about other people's feelings. We should just say exactly what we believe, and in this way, we can create an idea meritocracy where the best ideas rise to the top and we can all be successful in business. Well, Ray Dalio is a billionaire. He created this business, this hedge fund called Bridgewater, and he's been enormously successful. So in some ways, this idea of radical transparency is working for him. But even in his book, he talks about how it almost ruined his business because he was hurting too many people's feelings. And ultimately, I said in that video that I didn't think it was a good idea because it didn't take into account the possibility that people will be humiliated, hurt, disrespected, and it just disregards their feelings. And I think in every social interaction, there is this possibility that we could be humiliated or lose face, and radical honesty doesn't pay enough attention to the possibility to lose face. And if everyone is always worried about going into an interaction and losing face, they're simply not going to be able to function very well in that kind of environment. And in fact, lots of people leave Ray Dalio's company for that reason. So ultimately, I said that radical honesty was not a good idea. Well, I got a comment on that video, which I thought was very interesting. So I want to read you that comment and then I'll talk about it. First of all, it says, with all due respect, and I think that's the beginning of trouble, right? We know when someone says with all due respect to us, that is not going to be very respectful. So let's see what this person says. This person is Dapnet, who messaged me. It says, with all due respect, you clearly don't comprehend Ray's version of radical honesty. You sound like a typical promoter of dishonesty, disguised under the hood of political correctness. The status quo in society is thieving due to thinkers like you. You also sound like a person who has not read much about great men in history. Well, that's what you get, I think, from a person who believes in radical honesty. So Dapnet wasn't very concerned about my feelings, wasn't concerned about disrespecting me or making me feel humiliated. He just said exactly what he felt. And of course, he said, with all due respect, maybe thinking that that was going to take the edge off. So first of all, this is what the world would be like if everyone adhered to Ray Dalio's principle of radical honesty. Everyone would walk around saying things like what Dapnet says. You sound like a typical promoter of dishonesty disguised under the hood of political correctness. The status quo in society is thieving due to thinkers like you. You also sound like a person who has not read much about great men in history. So, okay, although I think that this illustrates one of the bad things about radical honesty, that is its disregard for people's feelings and their desire to maintain face, that is to believe that they're positively valued in an interaction. Let's put that aside for the moment and take up some of the issues that I think are legitimate that are raised by this comment. So first of all, we have to think about how communication really works. Can we be direct all the time? I don't think we can. In fact, I know we can't. Indirectness is used all the time. Communication would be impossible if we had to literally say every single thing that we believed. If we had to literally say every one of our intentions, every one of our plans, goals, and so on. In fact, the way communication actually works is that we infer the vast majority of what we understand. People say one thing, and we infer tons and tons of more information based on common sense, based on what I know about what we were talking about, based on what I know about the context, based on shared history between myself and the person that I'm talking to, based on norms in the culture, based on everyday understanding of how the world works. I use all that information to hear what a person says and then infer what they meant, infer what their plans, goals, beliefs, and intentions are. That's how communication works. So I think we're cursed with a bad metaphor for how communication works. This metaphor of that words are containers. We put our ideas into these containers, we transmit them across some medium, and then on the other side of the medium, the other person takes our idea out of the word and understands exactly what we meant. So this coding and decoding metaphor, which is so popular. If you Google how communication works, especially in Google Images, the most common thing you'll see is pictures of this sender message receiver model. But I think a better model of communication is a detective like Sherlock Holmes. So I think the way communication really works is that we're all detectives. And the mystery we're trying to solve is the mystery of the other person's plans, goals, beliefs, and intentions. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What are they planning? What are they intending? This is the mystery of every social interaction, the one we're trying to solve. And the only clues we have are the things people say, as well as their nonverbal behavior, like their posture, gesture, facial expression, rate, pitch, volume, and tone of voice. These are all, as well as the context and previous knowledge about the person and knowledge about the way the world works. All these things, like Sherlock Holmes, we use as clues in order to deduce or make inferences about what the person really means. So there's an element of indirectness or inference in every episode of communication. In every interaction, we are making inferences. So I don't think indirectness can be avoided. I don't think it's possible to literally say everything we feel or mean or intend. There wouldn't be time even to get up in the morning or to say, even to have the simplest interaction. So what's really going on? Why do we suspect that maybe being indirect is the same thing as being dishonest? I think there's some legitimate basis for this. So let's think about a video I just made about making indirect requests. So this is something like asking for the salt by, instead of saying, I hereby request the salt, which would be a direct request, you say something like, is that salt? Is the salt over there? Is there any salt on the table? Boy, this would be so much better with a little bit of salt. Or asking for a ride to work by saying, oh man, it's so cold outside. I really don't want to walk outside in this rainy, cold weather. People can make inferences about that, and they correctly infer that I'm asking for a ride or I'm asking you to pass the salt. And by being indirect, we pay deference to them. A direct request is a little bit of an affront to a person's desire to be left alone. So in politeness, we can, by being indirect, we show deference to a person. And this is a way of smoothing over the social world, making requests, which we have to do in ordinary social life, doing so indirectly in order to be polite. So the question is there something deceptive about saying, is there any salt? Is the salt over there? Is there something deceptive about that? Are we trying to deceive the other person about our intentions? I just don't think so. In fact, what I'm trying to do is signal my intention. When I say, is there any salt over there? Or is the salt on the table? Or, boy, this would be, a little bit of salt would make this perfect. I'm trying to signal my intention. I'm not trying to deceive you about my intention. Or if I say, it's freezing outside, and I'm so tired, I don't want to walk to work in this cold rain like we have in Chicago right now. I'm trying to signal my intention that I want to ride. There's nothing deceptive about it. I'm not trying to deceive you. I am trying to say one thing by saying another. What I am trying to signal to you is, A, I want to ride, and B, I want to show deference to you because asking you directly for a ride might be an affront to your desire to be left alone. But in no way am I being deceptive. I think the reason that people think we're being deceptive when we're being indirect is because indirectness requires inference, and we can sometimes invite people to make the wrong inference. And in that way, we can use indirectness deceptively. So I don't think Dapnet is completely off base when he associates indirectness with deception. Indirectness can be used to deceive. When someone says, for example, you think of examples from politics. So you think of Bill Clinton, I did not have sex with that woman, Monica Lewinsky. Well, he invited a certain inference about what he did and didn't do, and it wasn't exactly true. He was inviting us to make an inference about what he didn't do when, in fact, he did do something that would have been very damning. Or even in present-day politics where President Trump says, no collusion, no collusion. Well, he's inviting us to make the inference that he did absolutely nothing wrong, and time will tell whether this is a truthful or a deceptive implication that he's inviting us to make. But I think the fact that when we communicate via implication, when we insist that people make inferences about our meaning, there is the possibility that they will make the wrong inference because we have not literally said what we meant. Instead, we give people clues, and we think there are enough clues for them to make the correct inference. But if we have bad intentions, we can give people clues, and they can be led to make the wrong inference. And that is, in fact, deceptive. So I don't think ordinary indirectness, like, can you pass the salt, or I sure wish I had some salt, This, I'm trying to signal my actual intention. I don't think that's deceptive at all. But I think there's the potential. When we exploit the inferential nature of communication, there is the potential to invite incorrect inferences. We invite people to make inferences which are in fact deceptive with respect to the truth. And I think that's why people are suspicious of indirectness and of non-literal language, because it has this possibility to be deceptive. Related to that is when we say something indirectly. So when I say, oh, it's so cold out, I really don't want to walk to work today. And someone says to us, I told you I can't give you a ride. I need to get to work on time. Then we can deny it. We can say, oh, no. I wasn't asking for a ride. So the deniability of our intentions, when in fact I was asking for a ride, then the fact that I can deny it because I didn't make the request literally also seems a little bit deceptive. So I think the deniability of non-literal speech, we can deny intentions that we actually had, that seems deceptive. And the fact that we can invite people to make incorrect inferences, that's deceptive as well. So we'll return again and again to this idea of indirectness, non-literal language, using inferences to communicate and their relationship to truth and deception. These are fundamental issues in communication. So thanks for listening. If you like this kind of video, please like and subscribe and share and go to howcommunicationworks.com and sign up for our email list. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.